Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and you have entered into The Fix.
Say you don't know me, I recognize my face. Say you don't care who goes to that kind of place. Knee deep in the hoopla, sinking in your fight. Too many runaways.
Hey, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining. We are always humbled that you would choose us as one of the podcasts and places that you go to, whether it's regular or intermittent, or if this is your first time. We are grateful for you to be here. If you know much about the podcast and what I'm about, I try to deliver different topics that I experience and other people that I know in recovery experience as well, to sort of give us a well-rounded perspective of recovered life and the things that are important universally to us all. When I consider going back to, say, January 28th podcast, it was called the Cornerstone of Faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith is foundational and critical to our recovery because we have to believe things that we can't see. There's no way to go about this, especially when we're looking forward to things that we hope to happen, that we're in God's waiting room for, and yet we just need to still trudge through this day and maybe a few more days before it comes into play. But in the meantime, we have faith that when we continue to do the things that we are designed or supposed or led to do, then we can be certain that these things will come to fruition, and one day we will be able to see tangibly what we in faith had waited for. You may go back to things we discover along the way. We're always learning new things, or the power of celebration. There's something there, hopefully, for everyone. And everyone has a place. And again, if you listen regularly, that's fantastic. Continue to send me your thoughts and concerns on things that we can do a little bit more effectively to help encourage you along your journey of recovery. Hey, for today on the Fix, what we're going to talk about is it's called Control the Controllable, right? And I know that sounds almost redundant, and maybe we don't need to even bring it up, but I think it's very important that we learn to define what is controllable in our life, and then we go control it. Because why not control something that we can control? Because if we don't, it's going to get out of control. Does that make sense? And then instead of being the master of our own ship, or the master of our own destiny, or the decider, the determining factor in our life, these things that we have left to the uncontrollables, or maybe they were uncontrollable all along, we tried to control them and it didn't work, or maybe they were things we could control, now we didn't, and now they're uncontrollable. And we need to come to that level of understanding. So control the controllable. Sometimes the best way to respond to the uncontrollable is to make the necessary changes that make those uncontrollable aspects irrelevant in our life. We can sometimes diffuse or neutralize or remove them. Or if we find out that which is considered something uncontrollable, maybe we can turn it into something we can control if we apply or establish proper ownership to that. Does that make sense? Because if we don't control the controllable, then the uncontrollable will control us. And certainly, certainly in our life, there are going to be things that are out of our control, and we just have to hope the consequences or the response to those things is minimized. But that should be the exception, not the rule, right? So with everything that is out there, there's always going to be those things that are just out of our control. It doesn't make them bad necessarily. Sometimes it just means because they are out of our control or they are an uncontrollable, doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. It just requires our compliance. Like what people do or say to me, for the most part, that is not in my control because I can't own what they do. They have to own that themselves. Or say laws, local, state, and federal laws. We don't necessarily control them, but we can neutralize them by complying, right? And therefore, they don't control me or affect me in a negative sense as something that can, because it is an uncontrollable aspect of my life. One thing I will say regarding the people in my life and what they say or do to me, I learned early on from my friend Trish, and she used to say, it's not what they say and it's not what they do, it's how I react. So even if there's a person in my life that obviously I can't control, because again, they're going to own their own behavior, I still can determine how I respond to that in terms of what my action or reaction is based on something they say or something they do. But, when we look at areas of recovery, these things are really important because we want to live a balanced life. We want to think that for the most part, when we recount our day at the end of the day, that things are going according to the plan, the things that we've set out that we want for our own life. So what are some of the things that we can control? What are some of the controllables? So one of the first things that may be the most important are relationships. Relationships are so important, and they are critical to my wellness and the depth of and the quality of my personal life. Some of these relationships, they're interpersonal, like marriage and significant others, and some are social friends. Some are personal yet not intimate, such as other family members, and some may be work relationships. And when I mention relationships, it's people that I would see on a regular basis for various things in my life. Those are things I can control because, for the most part, unless you're a minor, I pretty much control the people in my life, who's in my life or who's not in my life. Even with family members, I can't control whether or not they're a family member, whether a sibling or a niece or a nephew or an uncle or an aunt, but I can control based on healthy boundaries what role they play in my life, right? I can control that. I've mentioned her before, but Joyce Landorf, in her tape series years ago, did a talk, and it was called Your Irregular People. And it was really a pretty cool concept. And we all have them in our life. And maybe you didn't know that they were irregular people. But they're people who are in our life, sometimes temporary, but for the most part, they're permanent. They are like the relative or someone who, because of someone else's relationship, we might not be related by DNA, but we're related through another relationship for which we are DNA connected, where that person's just going to be in our life. And that irregular person is that person who can make a bright, sunny day dark and discouraging just by their presence or their actions. And we really can't get away. So we have to connect with them, or at least get together with them. And we just have to make the best out of it and utilize skills and know that it's only going to be a short window of time. So there are some of those relationships we don't control. I do understand that there are irregular people in all of our lives, and we just sort of tolerate them as, very likely they're tolerating us as well. But for the most part, we choose. We can control who is in our life in terms of direct contact and direct association with us. We can control who our significant other is, especially making good choices in the beginning, but we can ultimately control that moving forward. And it is so important that we understand that we decide what we can control and what we can't control. Very often when I'll sit down with people that I coach and I will say to them, okay, give me a list of the things in your life, people, places, and things that are in your life. And then I want you to say to me, can you control whether they're in your life or you can't control? And it's very little. Once we have the conversation, there's very few things in your life that you can't control, that we can't control. I just need to be responsible to determine whether or not they're good for me in my life. I was talking to a friend of mine not too far back, and they were in a relationship with this person that I happen to like very much. And I said to them, hey, are you seeing so-and-so anymore? And they said, no, we're not together. And I said, well, I thought you liked them. And they said, well, I did. I liked them very much. However, this person really wasn't good for me in my life. And therefore, I wanted to take back control. And part of controlling that critical element of my life was to remove them from my life. And I thought, wow, how courageous you are. Because so often we allow that emotion that gets us to do something that doesn't make sense intellectually, but because it feels good, we rationalize, we minimize, and we deny that negative element in our life. But this person was brave and courageous enough to just go ahead and take that back and take that thing that she could control and to control it. When you talk about work, it's like, well, Robert, this is my job. I have to be here. Well, we either have to learn how to deal with it, or maybe, and I know this might sound critical or harsh or what have you, but maybe you need to go find another job. Maybe if there's so many things that are controlling you that are negative, that you want that control back on how that work makes you feel, or whether it's because of emotional or practical that they don't pay you enough, what have you, we need to take that control back, right? Personal activities we control. We should be able to control what we're personally involved with, right? We are in control of who we are involved with. Now we need to control what we do in those aspects of our life. And then also, we need to control where we go. Very critical. Early on in recovery, they said, a couple of the things that you really need to do, Robert, is to change old playgrounds and old playmates, right? And usually in those playgrounds, there were particular activities that went on where those places were at. And it was a negative aspect. They would begin to control me again, right? And many of you have heard the story of my relapse at 71 days. And it was because I wasn't controlling my social, which was also a work relationship, or the work relationship became social. And I went to a particular place to perform a particular function. And because I wasn't controlling those things, they were controlling me. It, within a relatively short period of time, led to a relapse. So when I came back to recovery, it was pretty clear to me that I needed to take control of that relationship back. And the control meant that I removed them from my life. Sometimes we control things by reworking it or reassigning it in our life. Sometimes we control the controllable by removing them from our life. And we have to really make that judgment objectively without emotion to make sure that we're taking a position or making a decision that makes practical sense. And if it causes any confusion or concern, then certainly ask some counsel. And hopefully, as a person of recovery, you have someone who is mentoring you, a sponsor, what have you, a confidant of sorts that you can help walk through these things in. It is much easier going through recovery with another person who has achieved what you're hoping to achieve, so you can trust their path and then balance or bounce your path off them, that they can help guide you along the way. And then another thing that we do control is our reactions. I previously stated that it's not what they say and it's not what they do, it's how we react. Our reactions are so powerful because a reaction is normally negative. It's usually an emotional response to something that had occurred. We do it almost through muscle memory, as it were, or emotional memory. But that is our reaction. I like rather to be proactive, where I have a plan in place and I'm getting ready to utilize that plan. There's another, even a higher domain, and that is called preactive. Preactive is something that really takes some time to develop, and I might even do a podcast on it, but simply a preactive approach transcends even the proactive response. There's a reaction, which is usually negative. There is a proactive, which is a normal planned response that we implement at the notion or the signs of something beginning to occur. But then there's a preactive domain, and I think it's the highest domain. And being preactive means through meditation and almost like an emotional or mind memory, I approach life differently. I make a way or a path for things that I know that are somewhat predictable in terms of that they're going to happen, but I'm not sure of when or from where they're going to happen. So if I set in motion things that go out before those things occur, very often they don't occur at all. In a pre-active world, I have set myself up whereby the proactive response is seamless and I never skip a beat, or I remove that particular element or situation from occurring at all, thus removing any possibility that I would be reactive, and I don't even have to institute or initiate a proactive response. Pre-activity is a high level, and I suggest that we have this conversation again, because I think it's very vital to us in living a life where we almost have permission, the freedom to be more happy, more joyous, and more free, because there is less friction in our life that's holding us back or preventing our forward movement. Again, to control the controllable, the goal is to remove the uncontrollable from controlling us. Because again, if we don't control the things that we can control, they will become uncontrollable. And we do not want to be ruled or governed by the uncontrollable. We want to be known as a person who is in charge of our own recovered life. Because we don't want past behaviors or substances making decisions for us. That's when our life goes down the tubes rather quickly. So we want to be able to diffuse, neutralize, or remove anything in our life that we can't control, because the likelihood, if we can't control it to the point where it is conducive and in alignment with the rest of our life, then it doesn't need to be there in the first place. And this is, once again, we need to be very objective in our view of ourselves, and probably should enlist the view of someone else. Can you do that? Can you be that honest with yourself to really take your own inventory? Because we all have to do it from time to time in terms of assessing our life with where is it going? Is there many bumps along the way? Our life should not be characterized by a lot of bumps. Every now and then we're going to hit a bump in the road, right? Because life isn't perfect and we aren't as well. But our road should not be known by the bumps. Matter of fact, in a pre-active mindset, we remove the bumps that would have been waiting for us. But because of our elevated position and our approach to living, they've smoothed out before we even got there. And that's a wonderful place to be. And it doesn't mean we're minimizing, rationalizing, or denying life on life's terms. It just means that in advance, we've developed a higher mindset, a particular quality approach to our life, which demands that road be much more smooth than it would have been had we not decided to take that approach. So where I work, my relationships, my personal activities, where I go, and of course my reactions, my proactions, and ultimately my pre-active mindset. These are the things that I can control. And when I control the controllables, the uncontrollables don't control me. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I know I did. Now I'm going to go out and see if these things really work, right? Because they do. I've been doing these things for a long time. I'm so excited. April 25th, and in just about 5 or 6 weeks, I will be clean and sober 34 years. And I am mind blown by what I have learned and what I've been allowed to share and what has been shared with me, because I say it once and I say it again. We got sick apart, but we get well together. Thank you for joining. My name is Robert, and I am the Recovery Guy.